Two friends, Maya and Ethan, left the same university with the same degree and nearly the same dream. They both wanted work that felt meaningful. They both imagined building something of their own one day, something that would use their full abilities and give them a sense of freedom and purpose. They had similar talent, similar circles, and the same spark in their eyes when they talked late into the night about what might be possible. In the beginning, their paths looked almost identical. Both read the same books, listened to the same interviews, and felt the same rush of energy after every story of someone who had broken through. Maya moved hardest during those waves. After a powerful podcast or a late-night conversation, she would stay up planning, send messages to people she admired, or spend an entire weekend mapping out her first real step. But when the wave passed, the ordinary days felt heavier. The work no longer carried that electric charge. There was always a reason to pause, a demanding stretch at her job, a stretch of doubt, or simply the quiet absence of inspiration. Over time, the dream moved from something she acted on to something she thought about less and less. It became a someday story she still tells when the mood is right. Ethan made a different choice. He stopped waiting for the feeling to return. Instead, he created one small, non-negotiable practice. Every weekday morning, he woke 30 minutes earlier and gave that time to the work connected to his long-term vision. Some mornings, the ideas flowed easily. Other mornings, he sat in front of a blank page or an empty inbox and felt nothing but resistance. On those mornings, he still kept his promise. He didn't demand brilliance. He only asked for presence. One section written, one difficult email sent, one small skill practiced. The sessions were rarely dramatic. Over weeks, they simply accumulated. Over months, they became the quiet foundation of real progress. People began to notice his steady movement. Opportunities found him because he was always a little further along than the last time anyone checked. 5 years later, Ethan had built the kind of body of work and quiet freedom that Maya still spoke about as a future possibility. The difference between them was never the size of their ambition. It was what they did on the days the ambition felt ordinary. Ambition gave both of them the engine, the clear picture of where they wanted to go and why it mattered. Discipline became the fuel that actually moved one of them forward, mile after ordinary mile, when no one else was watching and the initial excitement had long since faded. Most people who wrestle with discipline do not lack ambition. If anything, the struggle often belongs to those who want the most. The difficulty is that we have learned to treat discipline as something we endure rather than something we rely on. We see it as punishment for not being naturally consistent, or as a temporary fix we activate when motivation runs low and then set aside once we feel inspired again. We imagine it as a strict parent we must obey until we reach the goal, at which point we can finally relax and live freely. That picture is not only exhausting, it is also incomplete. Discipline is not the heavy price you pay for success. It is the quiet advantage that makes success sustainable instead of exhausting. It is the daily decision to honor the person you are becoming more than the comfort of the moment you are in. Motivation, for all its warmth, is an emotion. It rises and falls with sleep, stress, the weather, and 100 small circumstances you cannot control. Inspiration is a gift when it arrives, but you cannot schedule it or summon it on demand. Talent opens doors, yet talent without consistent direction often remains potential that never quite becomes a life. Without discipline as the steady fuel, ambition stays a beautiful intention rather than a lived reality. With it, even ordinary talent and ordinary days can produce results that feel disproportionate over time. Take a moment right now and ask yourself something honest. When you think about the goals that matter most to you, how much of your energy goes into waiting for the right feeling, the right season, or the right surge of motivation? And how much goes into simply showing up and doing the next small thing, regardless of the feeling? That question sits at the center of everything we will explore together. In the chapters ahead, we will walk through 6 essential movements that turn discipline from something you occasionally force into something you can trust. We will begin by looking clearly at what ambition actually is and why so many driven people end up chasing versions of it that cannot sustain them. We will then redefine discipline itself, moving away from the old picture of punishment or grim obligation toward a more grounded understanding rooted in self-respect and long-term freedom. You will discover how to create simple daily ignition rituals that help you begin, even when resistance is loudest. We will meet the resistance that shows up for everyone who tries to change anything meaningful, and we will learn how to move through it without turning every difficult day into a personal failure. We will see the quiet, almost unfair power of compounding small actions, how tiny, consistent efforts create results that later feel inevitable. And we will close by focusing on the kind of endurance that turns discipline from a practice you maintain into a quiet strength you carry for the rest of your life. You are not here simply to feel inspired for the length of this book. Inspiration is easy to find and easy to lose. You are here to be equipped with a clearer understanding of why discipline matters, with practices you can actually use, and with a steadier sense of what becomes possible when you stop negotiating with yourself and begin fueling your ambition every single day. As you listen, keep something nearby to write with. After each chapter, pause for a few minutes. Choose one small disciplined action you can actually take, something modest enough that you will do it, yet meaningful enough that it matters. These small choices are where the real story of your ambition begins to change. By the time we reach the final pages, my hope is that you will not only understand the fuel of ambition, but feel it working quietly in your own life, turning daily effort into lasting progress, and quiet consistency into the kind of success that endures long after the initial spark has settled into steady flame. Chapter 1: The Anatomy of True Ambition, from Vague Dreams to Burning Purpose. Most of us carry ambitions that sound reasonable when we say them out loud. I want to be successful. I want to make a real difference. I want my work to matter. These statements feel good to hold. They give us a sense of forward motion, or at least the comfort that we are not standing still. Yet, when the day ends and the lights are low, many of these ambitions reveal themselves as strangely weightless. They have no particular shape, no clear destination, no emotional pull strong enough to move us when motivation is absent and resistance is present. That weightlessness is not a failure of character. It is a failure of clarity. Alex was 34, a capable software engineer at a stable company. When people asked what he wanted, he answered with the usual phrases. He wanted to do something meaningful with technology. He wanted to build something of his own. He wanted his skills to serve more than quarterly targets. These were not lies. They were simply too large and too soft to guide anything real. So he tried many things in small, scattered ways. He started 3 different side projects in 18 months. He read books on entrepreneurship, took an online course in product design, and occasionally stayed late at the office, hoping a promotion would bring the meaning he was missing. He watched friends announce startups or career pivots and felt the quiet sting of comparison. His energy spread thin across too many possibilities. Progress in any one direction felt impossible. After 2 years, he felt more tired than when he began, and no closer to anything he could name with certainty. Then something ordinary but sharp happened. His mother was diagnosed with a chronic illness that required constant coordination between doctors, insurance, and daily life. Alex watched her navigate a system that seemed designed to exhaust the very people it was meant to help. In the middle of one difficult night, sitting in a hospital hallway, he realized the ambition he had been carrying was not truly his. It was a collection of borrowed ideas about success and impact. What he actually cared about, with a clarity that surprised him, was using technology to reduce the hidden burden on families managing serious illness. Not in some abstract future, not as one of many side projects, but as the central thread of his working life. That single shift changed everything that followed. He stopped saying yes to generic stretch assignments at work. He began declining invitations to interesting but unrelated projects. He started reading medical papers instead of another startup biography. He reached out to 2 patient advocates and asked if he could listen to their actual days. None of these actions felt heroic. They felt almost inevitable, once the ambition had a precise shape and a personal reason to exist. The same hours that used to disappear into scattered effort now carried a quiet sense of direction. Discipline did not have to be forced as hard, because the why had finally become specific enough to pull him. This is the difference between a vague wish and true ambition. A vague wish lives in the realm of preferences. It says, "I would like my life to feel better or more significant." True ambition lives in the realm of identity and consequence. It says, "This particular contribution, pursued over time, is how I become the person I most respect and how I serve what I most value." One drifts with circumstances. The other creates its own current. When ambition remains scattered, the costs are rarely dramatic at first. They arrive as a slow diffusion of energy. You give a little here and a little there, never enough in any one place to create momentum. Comparison becomes constant because you have no clear standard of your own. Every other path looks equally plausible and therefore equally urgent. Quiet burnout follows, not from working too hard on one thing, but from the exhaustion of never being able to finish anything that matters. You begin to protect yourself by lowering the stakes. Maybe it's not that important after all. The dream does not die in one dramatic moment. It simply loses its voice. Discipline cannot rescue an ambition that has no center. It can only sustain what already has direction and emotional weight. That is why the work of clarifying ambition is not a luxury. It is the first act of discipline itself. There is a simple way to begin that work. Let's call it the 3 questions of burning purpose. These are not meant to be answered once and filed away. They are meant to be lived with, until the answers become more vivid than the fog you started with. The first question is this: if this ambition became real in 5 or 10 years, what would the actual texture of your daily life be? Not the title you would hold or the amount in your bank account, but the feeling of your ordinary Tuesday. Who would you spend time with? What kinds of problems would occupy your mind? What would you no longer have to tolerate? Most people skip this question because it feels too practical. Yet, without a concrete picture of the life you are actually trying to build, ambition remains a slogan rather than a destination. The second question goes deeper. What part of your own story or your own values makes this ambition feel non-negotiable? Not the version that sounds impressive to others, but the private reason that carries memory or conviction. For Alex, it was the specific helplessness he felt watching his mother navigate a broken system. For you, it might be a skill you once needed and never found, a value you watched someone violate, or a quiet strength you want to offer the next generation. When the why is connected to something you have already lived or deeply believe, it stops being motivational language and becomes personal necessity. The third question asks about cost. If you never moved toward this ambition in any sustained way, what would you quietly lose over time? Not the dramatic regret you might feel at 80, but the slower erosion of self-respect or possibility that happens when you keep choosing comfort over the thing you say matters. This question is uncomfortable because it removes the escape hatch of someday. It forces you to feel, even slightly, what continued vagueness is already costing you. Take these 3 questions with you after this chapter. You do not need to answer them perfectly. You only need to answer them more honestly than you have answered similar questions before. Write them down. Sit with them for 10 minutes without your phone. Notice what surfaces when you stop trying to sound reasonable and start trying to sound true. Once ambition has this kind of clarity and emotional charge, it still cannot move itself. A clear vision is not a completed life. It is only a more precise starting point. The vision tells you where you are going and why the journey is worth the difficulty. It does not, by itself, supply the daily capacity to keep walking when the path is steep, ordinary, or lonely. That capacity comes from something else entirely. Chapter 2: Redefining Discipline, from Force to Fuel. For most of us, the word discipline carries a certain weight in the body. It brings to mind early alarms we dread, strict rules we eventually break, and the familiar voice that says we should be doing more, better, or faster. We picture white-knuckling through difficult mornings, or forcing ourselves into routines that feel more like punishment than progress. Discipline, in this common view, is something we endure in order to become worthy of the life we want. It is the price we pay, rather than the advantage we claim. That picture is not only exhausting, it is also incomplete. Discipline is not the rigid structure you impose on a reluctant self. It is the highest form of self-respect you can offer the person you are becoming. It is the premium fuel you willingly give your ambition every single day, not because you are forcing yourself to be good, but because you have decided that your future self deserves the dignity of consistent effort. When you see discipline this way, it stops feeling like a heavy obligation and starts feeling like an act of care. Motivation and discipline are often confused, yet they operate in entirely different ways. Motivation is a spark. It appears when conditions are right, such as after an inspiring conversation, a good night's sleep, or a moment of clarity. It feels wonderful while it lasts, but it is never reliable on demand. You cannot schedule it. You cannot summon it when you are tired or discouraged. Discipline, by contrast, is the engine you can start regardless of mood. It does not wait for the spark. It creates motion from the simple decision to begin, and then it sustains that motion long after the feeling has faded. The deepest shift happens when discipline moves from something you do to something you are. Most people begin with the thought, "I need to be more disciplined." That sentence keeps discipline outside of you, like a tool you must pick up and put down. The more powerful reframe is quieter. "I'm the kind of person who follows through on what matters to me." This is identity-based discipline. It is not about perfect streaks or flawless execution. It is about the quiet, repeated decision to act in ways that are consistent with the person you have chosen to become. Mary had spent years trying to force herself into a disciplined life. She created elaborate morning routines with color-coded schedules and strict rules about phone use, meditation time, and exercise. When she followed them, she felt proud. When she missed even one piece, she felt like a failure and often abandoned the whole system for weeks. The pressure made the routines brittle. After one particularly hard season at work, she stopped trying altogether and told herself she was simply not a disciplined person. Then, something small but decisive changed. Instead of building another perfect system, she asked a different question. What would it mean for me to treat my mornings as something worth protecting, not because I should, but because the person I want to be needs that time? She stopped trying to become disciplined and started acting from a simpler identity. I am someone who begins the day with intention. Her first action was almost embarrassingly small. She placed a notebook and pen on her nightstand the night before and committed only to writing one sentence each morning about what mattered most that day. No meditation app, no hour-long workout, just one sentence. Some mornings, she wrote more. Some mornings, she wrote exactly one line and closed the notebook. Because the action was small enough to keep her promise to herself, she rarely missed it. Over months, the single sentence became 5 minutes of reflection. The 5 minutes became a short walk. The walk became the foundation for clearer decisions at work. The pressure disappeared because she was no longer performing discipline. She was simply being the person who protects her mornings. You can begin this same shift with practices that are small enough to feel possible and meaningful enough to matter. One practical way is to choose a tiny starting action that directly expresses the identity you want to claim. If you want to become someone who moves your body daily, begin with 2 minutes of movement rather than a full workout. The size is not the point. The consistency of keeping a promise to yourself is. Each time you follow through on something small, you strengthen the evidence that you are the kind of person who follows through. Another way is to design your environment, so the disciplined choice becomes the easier choice. This is not about forcing willpower. It is about removing the small frictions that make starting harder than it needs to be. If you want to read more in the evening, place the book on your pillow in the morning, so it is waiting for you. If you want to begin work without distraction, close the extra browser tabs and silence notifications before you go to sleep. These preparations are quiet acts of respect for the person who will wake up tomorrow. A third way is to use a simple identity statement you can return to when resistance appears. The statement is not a motivational slogan. It is a reminder of who you are practicing to become. You might say to yourself, I am someone who keeps small promises, or I am the kind of person who protects time for what matters. When the alarm goes off and you feel the pull to stay in bed, the question becomes not, do I feel like getting up? but what would the person I am becoming do right now? The answer is usually clear, even when it is not easy. Many people quietly fear that discipline will make life smaller or joyless. They imagine it as a narrowing of options, a constant state of self-denial that leaves little room for spontaneity or pleasure. The opposite is closer to the truth. Discipline creates freedom by protecting the things that matter most. When you consistently do the work that moves your ambition forward, you gain confidence that compounds. You waste less time in indecision. You develop the capacity to say yes to meaningful opportunities because you are no longer scattered across a dozen half-kept commitments. The structure you build does not shrink your life. It creates the conditions in which your life can actually expand. Discipline is not something you eventually earn the right to enjoy. It is something you begin to practice the moment you decide your future self is worth showing up for, consistently and with care. Chapter 3: Igniting the Day, Morning Rituals That Power Success. The way you begin the day rarely stays contained to the first hour. Those first 60 to 90 minutes set a tone that either makes discipline feel like a natural extension of who you are, or turns it into an uphill battle you fight for the rest of the day. When you start by reacting to notifications, to other people's demands, to the rush of catching up, your nervous system stays in a defensive posture. Everything that follows feels harder. When you begin with even a small measure of intention, you create a different baseline. Your energy, your focus, and your willingness to follow through are all shaped by those early choices, whether you notice it in the moment or not. This does not mean you need a perfect 5 a.m. routine performed in silence, with expensive supplements and an hour of meditation. That image has created more guilt than actual discipline for most people. The power of a morning does not come from how early it starts, or how elaborate it looks. It comes from whether the time you do have is used with intentionality, whether your body is gently awakened rather than shocked into motion, whether your mind gains clarity instead of noise, and whether you reconnect, even briefly, with the deeper ambition that gives your day meaning. These 4 principles matter far more than any single prescribed ritual. You can build a powerful morning in 15 minutes or 45, depending on the season of your life. What matters is that the time is protected and pointed in a useful direction. Consider Elena, a mother of 2 young children, who runs a small creative business from home. For years, she woke up already behind. Her phone was the first thing she touched, and within minutes, she was answering client messages, while her children climbed into bed with her. By 10 o'clock, she felt scattered, slightly resentful, and strangely behind, even though the day had barely begun. Her ambition, to build work she was proud of while staying emotionally present for her family, felt permanently out of reach. She tried forcing earlier wake-up times and more complicated routines, but they collapsed the moment her children had a difficult night. One ordinary Tuesday, she made a different decision. She stopped trying to copy the morning routines she saw online, and instead asked what her future self would actually need in the first half hour of the day. She began protecting 25 minutes before the household fully woke. She would rise, drink a glass of water, and do 5 minutes of gentle movement. Not exercise for fitness, but simple stretches and a short walk around the block to wake her body and shift her breathing. Then she would sit with a single notebook page and write 2 things. The one work outcome that would make the day feel successful in relation to her bigger ambition, and one intention for how she wanted to show up with her children. The entire practice took less than half an hour. On mornings when her children woke early, she shortened it to 10 minutes, without abandoning it entirely. Over several months, the change was quiet but profound. She stopped feeling like she was chasing the day. She began feeling like she was meeting it. Her sense of self-worth grew, not because her business suddenly exploded, but because she had stopped starting every day in a state of reaction and self-abandonment. The discipline she practiced in the morning made every later act of discipline feel more possible, because she had already kept a promise to herself before anyone else asked anything of her. You can begin building this kind of morning with practices that are flexible enough to survive real life. The first is movement that wakes the body and brain rather than exhausts them. This can be as simple as 5 to 10 minutes of walking, stretching, or light body weight movements. The goal is not cardiovascular training. It is to shift your physiology out of sleep mode and into a state where focus becomes easier. Movement in the morning increases blood flow to the brain and helps regulate the nervous system before the day's demands arrive. You do not need a gym or special equipment. You only need to move enough that your body registers it has begun the day on purpose. The second practice is a short, deliberate review of the day's most important outcomes. Take 3 to 5 minutes to name the 1 to 3 results that would make today feel like a meaningful step toward your ambition. These are not your entire to-do list. They are the few things that actually move the needle on what matters most. Writing them down, even on a small card or in a notes app, creates a quiet contract with yourself. When later hours become reactive, you have a clear reference point that helps you return to what you decided mattered before the world started pulling. The third practice is a brief anchoring to your deeper why. This can be a single sentence you write or speak aloud, or a 30-second mental image of what it would feel like to live the ambition you clarified earlier. The purpose is not positive thinking. It is to remind your nervous system why the small disciplines of the day are worth the effort. When you connect the morning's actions to something larger than productivity, to the person you are becoming, or the impact you want to have, discipline stops feeling like self-denial and starts feeling like alignment. The fourth element is protection of the first 30 to 60 minutes from reactive inputs. This is perhaps the most important and the most resisted. It means keeping the phone on airplane mode or in another room until after your chosen practices are complete. It means not opening email or news or messages until you have first oriented yourself. The world will still be there in an hour. What changes is whether you meet the world from a grounded place or from a state of already being behind. Many people discover that this single boundary creates more calm and focus than any other morning habit they try. These practices will look different depending on your circumstances, and that is not a problem to solve. If you are a night owl, you do not need to force an early wake-up time that fights your biology. Instead, protect the quality of the first hour after you naturally wake, whenever that is. If you have young children, your ritual may need to be shorter or even shared in a simple way. Perhaps a quiet moment of intention while you make breakfast together. If your schedule is irregular because of shift work or travel, create a portable minimum version, like a 5-minute movement sequence and one written intention that you can do in a hotel room or before a long commute. The principle remains the same, even when the form must flex. A disciplined morning does more than improve the first few hours. It creates an early win that changes the texture of everything that follows. When you have already moved your body, clarified what matters, and protected your attention, you carry a different kind of momentum into the day. Later moments of resistance, such as the urge to scroll instead of work, the temptation to avoid a difficult conversation, the pull toward comfort over the next small step, meet a stronger version of you. You have already proven to yourself, before the day grew complicated, that you can choose what matters over what feels easy. That early evidence makes every subsequent choice slightly easier to make. In the next chapter, we will look directly at resistance itself, why it appears even when you know what to do, and how to work with it, rather than be defeated by it. A strong morning does not eliminate resistance. It simply ensures you meet it from a place of greater steadiness and self-trust. Chapter 4. Conquering Inner Resistance. Turning procrastination into progress. Resistance is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is the natural response that appears whenever you attempt something that carries weight. The moment you sit down to write the difficult email, begin the focused work on your most important project, or take the first step toward a goal that actually matters, a quiet internal force often rises. It does not always arrive as dramatic procrastination. Sometimes, it shows up as a sudden urge to check one more message, a sudden feeling that you should reorganize your desk first, or a heavy sense that you are simply not in the right mood. This force is not evidence of your weakness. It is evidence that the action in front of you is meaningful enough to threaten your comfort. Most resistance grows from a handful of familiar sources. There is the fear that what you produce will not be good enough, so the mind offers endless preparation as a way to delay judgment. There is the overwhelm that comes when a task feels too large or undefined, making the brain prefer the clarity of small, familiar distractions. There is the simple desire to avoid emotional discomfort, the boredom, the uncertainty, the quiet vulnerability of doing work that has no immediate reward. And there is the pull of easy dopamine, the quick hit of something that feels productive in the moment, but moves nothing that matters. These are not moral failings. They are predictable human responses to the gap between where you are and where your ambition asks you to go. Marcus had lived inside that gap for years. He wanted to write a book that would help other people navigate career transitions, the same transition he had survived. Every evening, he told himself that tomorrow he would write. Every morning, he opened his laptop, felt the familiar tightening in his chest, and told himself he would just check his email first. 2 hours later, he had answered messages, read articles that might be useful someday, and felt a low-grade shame that made him avoid the document entirely the next day. He tried longer to-do lists. He tried promising himself rewards. Nothing lasted, because every attempt still required him to win an internal battle at the exact moment resistance was strongest. The turning point came when he stopped trying to overpower resistance and started designing a way around it. He made 3 small but decisive changes. First, he adopted a 2-minute rule. He committed only to opening the document and writing 1 sentence. Nothing more. The promise was so small that resistance had little to push against. Most days, the single sentence turned into a paragraph, and sometimes into an hour of work. But even on the days it remained 1 sentence, he had kept his word to himself. Second, he changed his environment before resistance could appear. The night before, he closed every unnecessary tab. placed his phone in another room, and left the document open on his screen. When he sat down in the morning, the path of least resistance was already the work itself. Third, he removed the daily decision through pre-commitment. He told one trusted friend that he would send her a single paragraph every weekday by noon. The commitment was small enough to keep, but public enough that skipping it carried a quiet cost he did not want to pay. Over 6 months, the book moved from something he thought about to something that existed in chapters. The resistance did not disappear. It simply lost most of its power because Marcus no longer met it with an open decision. He met it with a system that had already decided for him. You can begin using versions of these same approaches immediately. The 2-minute rule works because the hardest part of any meaningful action is the moment before you begin. By shrinking the commitment to something almost trivial, you bypass the part of the brain that predicts effort and discomfort. Once you have started, continuing often feels easier than stopping. Environment design works because it reduces the number of decisions you must make when your willpower is lowest. If the phone is already in another room and the document is already open, you have fewer opportunities to choose the easier path. Pre-commitment works because it moves the moment of choice to a time when resistance is quieter. Deciding the night before, or making a small promise to someone else, removes the negotiation that happens when you are tired or distracted. These tactics do not require perfect execution. They require only that you use them more often than you ignore them. Resistance will still appear on some days. The difference is that you now have a way to move through it, rather than waiting for it to pass. One of the most damaging traps is the belief that discipline must be all or nothing. When you miss a morning, or lose an afternoon to distraction, or have a day where nothing meaningful gets done, the all-or-nothing voice tells you the streak is broken and the effort was wasted. This voice is not honest. It is simply loud. Real discipline includes the ability to recover without self-punishment. Missing a day does not erase the days you showed up. What matters is whether you return to the practice the next day, without making the miss into a story about your character. Compassionate recovery is not the opposite of discipline. It is part of what allows discipline to last. When you develop the capacity to start even when resistance is present, something important shifts. You stop needing to feel ready. You stop needing perfect conditions. You begin to trust that you can move forward on ordinary days, not only on inspired ones. That trust becomes the foundation for something larger. In the next chapter, we will look at the quiet power that emerges when these daily starts accumulate. Chapter 5: The Compound Advantage: How Daily Microdiscipline Creates Massive Results. Small daily actions rarely feel powerful in the moment. They feel ordinary, almost too small to matter. You write 200 words. You move your body for 15 minutes. You spend 10 focused minutes on the one thing that actually moves your ambition forward. At the end of the day, these choices seem modest, even insignificant. Yet, when the same small actions are repeated day after day, something remarkable happens beneath the surface. The results begin to compound. Compounding is simple in principle and profound in practice. 1% better or more disciplined each day does not produce 1% better results. It produces dramatically different results over time because each day's effort builds on the day before. The growth is not linear. It is exponential. What feels like almost nothing in a single week becomes unmistakable in a single year, and life-changing in a few years. The difficulty is that the human mind is not wired to notice slow, steady progress. We are built to notice dramatic changes, so the quiet accumulation of small disciplines often goes unseen until the difference is impossible to ignore. Consider two people who both want to build something meaningful with their evenings. One decides he will spend 20 minutes each night working on a skill or project that matters to him. The other waits for the perfect stretch of free time when he feels inspired and has several hours available. In any given week, the difference between them looks small. Over 12 months, however, the first person has invested more than 120 hours of focused effort. The second person has invested far less, and the effort has been scattered across unpredictable windows. After 2 years, the gap is no longer a matter of hours. It is a matter of identity. One person has become someone who steadily builds. The other is still someone who occasionally tries. The daily 20 minutes did not feel heroic on any single evening. Yet those minutes, protected and repeated, created a body of work, a level of skill, and a quiet confidence that the occasional big push could never match. This is the compound advantage. It turns ordinary consistency into extraordinary outcomes. The same principle applies whether you are building a body of creative work, strengthening a relationship, improving your health, or advancing in your craft. The daily action itself may be small. The direction it points and the repetition it receives are what create the transformation. Because the results of compounding are often invisible for long periods, tracking becomes essential fuel. When you can see evidence of your consistency, even when the larger goal still feels far away, you give yourself something concrete to trust. A simple notebook where you mark each day you kept your micro-commitment. A calendar on which you draw a line through every successful day. A weekly review in which you notice not how much you accomplished, but how consistently you showed up. These visible records do more than measure progress. They remind you that you are becoming the kind of person who follows through, even on days when nothing dramatic happens. You can design micro-commitments that are almost impossible to fail by making them deliberately small and by attaching them to something you already do. One approach is to define a minimum viable action, the smallest version of the habit that still counts. If your goal is daily writing, the minimum might be 1 sentence. If your goal is movement, the minimum might be a 5-minute walk. Because the bar is low, you can keep the promise to yourself even on difficult days. Another approach is to stack the new action onto an existing habit. You decide that after you pour your morning coffee, you will spend 2 minutes reviewing your most important outcome for the day. The existing habit becomes the cue, and the new action requires almost no extra decision. A third approach is to protect a weekly review that celebrates consistency rather than intensity. At the end of each week, you simply notice how many days you kept your small commitment. The act of noticing reinforces the behavior and gives you data about what is actually sustainable. Lena wanted to write a book that would help other people navigate the kind of career change she had survived. For years, she carried the ambition without action. The project felt too large, and the time required felt impossible to protect. One January, she made a different choice. She committed to writing 200 words every single day, no matter what. She also protected one 20-minute block of focused work on the business side of her writing, researching, outlining, or sending one thoughtful message. She tracked both habits in a simple notebook. For the first 4 months, she felt almost nothing was happening. The 200 words rarely turned into more. The 20-minute blocks sometimes felt scattered. She kept going, because the commitment was small enough that missing it would have felt more uncomfortable than doing it. Around month 6, she noticed she had written more than 30,000 words. Around month 9, she had a complete first draft. Around month 15, she signed with a literary agent. By month 20, her book was under contract, and she had also built a small community of readers who had followed her short daily posts. None of these outcomes had been visible in the early months. The daily discipline had been compounding quietly, strengthening her skill, clarifying her thinking, and building the evidence that she was someone who could finish what she started. The transformation did not come from any single dramatic effort. It came from the steady accumulation of actions that once felt too small to matter. Plateaus are an inevitable part of this process. There will be stretches when your effort feels invisible, and the results seem to have stalled. In those seasons, it is easy to believe that the daily actions no longer count. The truth is that compounding often continues underground. The skill is deepening. The relationships are strengthening. The thinking is sharpening. You simply cannot see the growth yet, because it has not yet reached a visible threshold. The only way through a plateau is to keep the small commitments, while you wait for the results to catch up. This is where the tracking and the identity you are building become most important. You are not continuing because you can see dramatic progress. You are continuing because you have decided you are the kind of person who keeps small promises to yourself. Compounding works most powerfully when the system you build can be sustained for years rather than weeks. A discipline that exhausts you after 3 months cannot compound. A discipline that fits inside your actual life, that can survive imperfect days and changing seasons, has the potential to reshape everything over time. The small action you take today will not change your life by tonight. It may not even feel noticeable by next month. Yet that same action, repeated and protected, becomes the quiet force that turns ambition into a life you can actually inhabit. The compound advantage belongs to those who are willing to do the small thing today and trust what it will become tomorrow. Chapter 6: Building Endurance, Systems and Mindsets for Lifelong Discipline. Discipline for a few weeks is mostly a matter of initial effort and novelty. Discipline across years and decades requires something deeper. It asks you to think in seasons rather than sprints, to build systems that survive disruption, and to hold an identity that does not depend on perfect conditions or constant motivation. The people who sustain meaningful progress over a lifetime are not the ones who never falter. They are the ones who have learned how to keep returning without making every return feel like starting over. Burnout does not usually arrive because someone worked hard for a season. It arrives when high standards are paired with no recovery, when intensity is treated as a permanent state rather than a rhythm. Sustainable discipline treats recovery as part of the practice, not as a reward for having earned it. It recognizes that life moves through periods of greater and lesser capacity. A parent with young children, someone caring for an aging family, or a person navigating a major career transition will not maintain the same output every month. The endurance comes from adjusting the form of the discipline while protecting its core. You lower the volume without lowering the commitment to show up. Elsa had maintained a daily writing practice and a simple movement habit for more than 15 years. She wrote through the early years of building her career, through the births of her 2 children, through a cross-country move, and through the long season when her mother's health declined and required significant care. She did not maintain the same intensity in every period. During the hardest months, she sometimes wrote only one paragraph or walked for 10 minutes. What never changed was the identity underneath the action. She saw herself as someone who protected time for her craft and for her body, no matter what else was happening. She did not treat these practices as optional extras that could be abandoned when life grew difficult. She treated them as non-negotiable expressions of who she was. When motivation disappeared for weeks at a time, she still kept the minimum version, because abandoning it would have felt like abandoning part of herself. This is the shift that makes lifelong discipline possible. It moves from "I have to be disciplined" to "this is simply who I am now." The first sentence keeps discipline outside of you, something you must constantly enforce. The second sentence makes it part of your self-definition. When an action flows from identity, rather than from willpower, the internal friction decreases. You are not negotiating with yourself every morning. You are simply being consistent with the person you have decided to be. Several systems support this kind of endurance. One is the practice of quarterly reviews. Every 3 months, you set aside time to look honestly at what is working and what needs adjustment. You ask whether your current commitments still fit the season you are in. You celebrate what you have sustained and release or reshape what has become unsustainable. These reviews prevent the slow accumulation of unrealistic expectations that eventually lead to collapse. They also give you permission to change form without changing your core commitment. Another system is environment and identity design. You arrange your physical world so that the disciplined choice becomes the easier choice. If you want to write every morning, the notebook or laptop is already open and waiting. If you want to move your body, the clothes are laid out the night before. At the same time, you reinforce the identity through small, repeated statements and actions. You do not just try to write. You remind yourself, "I am someone who protects time for the work that matters." Over months and years, these environmental cues and identity reminders reduce the amount of decision-making required. The behavior becomes closer to automatic. A third element is the deliberate building of discipline allies, habits that support other habits. Good sleep makes morning discipline easier. A short evening review makes the next day's intentions clearer. Protecting one focused hour makes the rest of the day feel more manageable. When you strengthen the supporting habits, the primary disciplines require less force. You are not relying on a single fragile streak. You are relying on a small web of mutually reinforcing behaviors. Even with strong systems, setbacks and motivation droughts will come. Life will change in ways you cannot predict. A new job, an illness, a family crisis, or simply a long stretch of gray ordinary days can make the familiar practices feel pointless or impossible. In those seasons, the question is not whether you will feel motivated. The question is whether you will abandon the identity or protect a smaller version of it. The people who endure do not pretend the difficult seasons do not exist. They simply refuse to let those seasons define who they are. They keep the minimum viable practice. They return without self-punishment when they have stepped away. They trust that consistency over years matters more than intensity in any single month. This is what real endurance looks like. It is not heroic effort sustained without interruption. It is the quiet decision, made again and again across changing circumstances, to remain the person who shows up for what matters. The systems you build and the identity you claim are what allow you to do that without burning out or giving up. As we come to the end of our time together, the larger truth becomes clear. The real victory is not any single achievement, no matter how impressive. The real victory is becoming the person who can keep building, day after day, through ordinary seasons and difficult ones, for the rest of your life. That is the promise discipline makes when it is understood not as temporary force, but as lifelong fuel. Conclusion. You began this journey seeing ambition for what it truly is, a powerful vision that quickly loses its force without steady fuel. You watched two paths diverge, one fueled by bursts of motivation that eventually faded, and one sustained by the quiet decision to show up every day. From there, you learned to redefine discipline itself, moving it from something that felt like punishment or temporary force into the highest expression of self-respect you can offer your future self. You explored how to ignite each morning with intention rather than reaction. You faced the reality of inner resistance and discovered practical ways to begin, even when you do not feel ready. You saw how small, consistent actions compound into results that once seemed impossible. And you considered what it takes to carry this practice across years and seasons, rather than burning brightly for a short time and fading. What you now carry is not simply a set of techniques. It is a new relationship with discipline. You understand that it is not the heavy chain that restricts your life, but the reliable fuel that turns your ambition into daily progress, and over time, into a life that feels like your own. The tools are in your hands. The question that remains is whether you will use them when the initial inspiration has passed and only the ordinary day remains. 1 year from now, if you choose this path, you will not have transformed into an unrecognizable version of yourself. You will, however, have something more valuable, a quiet track record of following through. You will have proven to yourself, in small and repeated ways, that you can protect what matters, even when life pulls in other directions. That evidence will begin to change how you move through your days. You will waste less time negotiating with yourself. You will carry a steadier sense of self-trust. 5 years from now, the compounding will have done its quiet work. The small actions you protected will have added up to something visible. Perhaps it will be a body of work, a deeper relationship, a level of skill, or a business that reflects who you actually are. More importantly, you will have become someone who no longer needs dramatic motivation to do what matters. The discipline will have moved from something you practice into something closer to who you are. 10 years and beyond, the difference becomes unmistakable. You will look back and see that the life you are living was not the result of one grand decision or one lucky break. It was built by the steady accumulation of days in which you chose to fuel your ambition rather than wait for it to carry you. Your character will have been shaped by those choices. Your results will reflect the person who kept showing up. It is not about achieving one impressive goal and then stopping. It is about becoming the kind of person whose effort, character, and impact continue to compound across the full span of a life. Before you step away from this recording, I invite you to make one small decision. Choose one disciplined action, modest enough that you can actually do it today, meaningful enough that it points toward the ambition you clarified earlier. It might be writing the first paragraph, making the first outreach, protecting the first focused hour, or simply preparing your environment for tomorrow's start. Do not wait for the perfect moment or the surge of motivation. Choose it now, while the understanding is fresh, and let that single action become the first brick in the structure you are building. The spark of ambition will always be available to you. What you do with it, day after day, is what determines whether it becomes a brief flash or a steady light that guides you through the years ahead. You now know the difference. You now have the fuel. The rest is up to the quiet, consistent choices only you can make.